group is really good. I've got like over 100 different annuities I can write. I've got probably like 30, 40 life insurance companies, bunch of Medicare supplements. Yeah. So
Hey,
right now I'm concentrating on the Medicare supplements because I can save my clients that I have already a lot of money by moving them.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of lining them up and kicking them out.
hey guys, so sorry not to interrupt, but we're live. So I kind of snuck it in, sorry. But now you know a little bit about how Holly's week has been, and it's been good. So happy Wine Wednesday, everybody out there. I hope that you're having a fabulous week. I hope your seahorses are doing fantastic and everything is going great for you. Open chat again this week. We need to get some speakers lined up, but it's just been really busy lately, you know. Anybody with kids knows as they get out for summer, it's cray cray. Anyhow, and I've had a few things happen with the Seahorse tanks that I'll talk about in a minute. But we're still here. It's Wednesday, and I've already got Ray, Dan, Holly, and Cheryl with me. Hey, Dylan's little hobbies. And so open chat, guys. I'm going to ask everybody how they're doing. If you have any questions about seahorses, tanks, or anything else, hit that comment section, and we'll be sure to help you as much as we can. And I'm curious too, did anybody see if the person from last week went to Seahorse Sources group?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Anybody see what?
Remember the person last week that was asking questions and we told them to go to Seahorse Sources group? Did anybody see a post from them?
Nope.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a shame. Well, if they're back, if they come back this week, we're fortunate to have Dan with us, so maybe we can get a few more of their questions asked. But
So, somebody posted today that they got some Brazilian seahorses.
Oh wow!
And well, Lucia came back and said those aren't red eye. And I started looking at them, and they had the big pronounced crown, typical of young Indians. They also had the darker spots. So I'm suspecting they came from the area off the coast of the west coast of Brazil, the Pacific area. I'm suspecting he got himself some immature Indians. Is what he's got.
Oh,
which
no.
is kind of interesting. I posted that they'll grow to 12 plus inches and gave him a few tips, but I'll tell you, he's not going to be able to raise any.
Right. And Indians are very different, right? I mean, their care and the way they act and behaviors are very different, aside from just them getting so much bigger.
They're definitely they're I call them the big bruisers of the seahorses because I've watched males. They have a large bony plate just below their coronet, and I'm watching them use that like a battering ram after going after other males. I mean, they're not playing around.
Oh my. Dan, did you ever raise engines?
Yes.
Yeah.
And did you think that they were extremely different or similar?
Indians is probably one of the most difficult to rear, and I would say they're probably the most difficult to keep long term. You find very few people who keep them very, very long term. Um, there was a couple people. Judy Barr kept some Indians, probably the longest of anybody that I've seen. Um, the they're just very very sensitive and very easy to lose.
Right. And you said hardest to rear. Are they polite? I always say it wrong. Pelagic, however you say it,
They
or are
are
they benthic?
pelagic.
Okay, pelagic. Thank you.
Yeah, they are pelagic, but the problem is that even with their 4 inches, you're still not out of the woods. I've had a batch of 400 that were at 3.75 to 4.25 inches in size, and I lost the entire batch within 5 days.
Oh my gosh.
I ran into the same kind of problem. I would get them up to about 4 inches, and then I'd lose them. And the other thing is trying to feed them because they're so tiny when they're born. A lot of pods are even going to be too big for them.
Rotifers too big?
I'm sorry?
Rotifers?
I did try that, but again, those don't provide the nutrition that we really want for seahorses.
I got load them the same as I do the Artemia.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
but
That's a good.
That was my first feedings for the Redeye.
yeah,
I mean,
I tried them, but I didn't see that I didn't have that much success with using rotifers on them.
Gotcha. But you can gut load rotifers to have the same as Artemia, right? Or is there a
Right.
difference?
Do what now? What's the question again?
If Cheryl was mentioning that and it's really interesting to me that this species goes from the smallest to the largest seahorses. That's crazy. But and welcome, Marina. We haven't seen you in a while. But anyways, the question was, can't you gut load rotifers the same that you would Artemia, or is
Yes,
there?
you can gut load rotor. In fact, you should gut load rotifers because they're basically devoid of any nutrition without it. Um,
Gotcha.
the problem is that rotifers, think of them as a almost like a gelatin capsule. They really don't provide anything besides what you gut load them with. And my experience has been, we'll take CUDA for example. Um, the highest survival rate we ever had with CUDA with with just rotifers was 50%, approximately 50%, and that was one time out of many, 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 many times. And when we switched to um, collecting plankton, we shot up to well above 90%.
Sure.
Wow.
Well,
So
there was
it can
also
make,
some research that was done that because they move in a circular pattern, many species of seahorses don't recognize them as a viable food source from what reading I did. Of course, that was quite some time ago.
well, even when they do, the problem with rotifer cultures, if they're not kept properly, it's very easy for them to become loaded up with ciliates and
Mm.
with Vibrio. So you got to be constantly cleaning your cultures and restarting them. And if you read the books on how to do it, you're supposed to start with sterile water. I mean, it's a lot more. It's easy, but there's steps that you have to take. Um, and I think from a nutritional standpoint, besides just the nutrition, I think that there's other things that you get from more complex organisms. When it comes to the gut bacteria, enzymes, and things that are not found in rotifers.
That's what I
And
was thinking. I was thinking if you, and as a breeder, yeah, you collecting yourself, because we try really hard and we've come a long way, but the stuff that's actually in the ocean, you don't know exactly what that's eating and what's, that they've come a long way with nutritional profiles, but I can totally see where, you know, the
Well,
collection of yourself would be best.
yeah, the advantage of the ocean collected stuff is that it's not a mono diet. A lot of people will start a culture of copepods and they'll be adding, one specific or two types of microalgae, where in the wild waters there's a variety of algae that they're feeding on. And some of the copepods that we get are not just strictly algae eaters; they eat other things as well. Um, it's definitely a more varied diet from things that are collected.
Gotcha. And I Cheryl, did the gentleman when he realized they were Indians and not Redi? What did he think they were? He thought they
well,
were Brazilian.
he was told he bought them, and he was told they were collected in Brazil.
Okay.
And so what he was he his question was, what species are they?
Oh, okay.
And Lucia, that's when she came in and says those are not reed eye, and I
Right.
agreed. And in view of the fact that they were collected off the coast of Brazil, the size, the coronet, because really young engines, well, not young, 3 to 4 inches, have a very pronounced coronet. They also, unlike Cuda, they have larger, darker spots on them,
Mm.
and they change very significantly as they mature.
If they were collected off the coast of Brazil, they could not be Indians. Indians are
Well,
west coast.
uh, I'm trying to think. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. What he said.
But remember too, I mean, we've seen it before that when we look, the first pair of red eye that I had looked nothing the first two pairs looked nothing like the reed eye that I see today. And
Right.
we've seen from experience with a couple of them that Lucy collected, it can be sometimes very difficult to correctly identify without DNA studies.
Exactly.
And most of the time, I think we're fairly accurate at what we see based on our experiences. But I still think there's a few out there that get past us that we're not correct in identifying. And I think that goes even to the experts, not just us. But I mean, you take the people who study the different species; they sometimes have a difficult time, looking at a single specimen.
Sure.
Well,
Remember, Graham Short thought Lucy's was a new species, and it ended up just being a hybrid. So yeah, exactly. And it scares me to think that first of all, someone that they got them without knowing what they were getting. That's kind of makes me uneasy. Is it a breeder or is it just an average?
the first time he's ever kept seahorses,
Oh boy. Well, I
and
wish him well.
they look the coronets on the youngsters that he had pictures of. They actually reminded me of like subs and Angustus and stuff like that from Australia because of the pronounced coronet. And the only thing I've seen indigenous to this area, or into the Pacific and Gulf Coast area, with that high of a coronet, uh, was immature engines.
Right. Well, and the other thing is maybe they weren't collected where they said they were. You know what I mean? We just don't know the whole story, so I'm not trying to make any assumptions or whatever.
Exactly.
And I
That
was
is
curious on this topic of species. Has anybody seen or heard anything more about the zebras? Nothing. Miss Marina, have you?
Yeah. Hi guys.
Hi.
Down here, there has been a few more floating around, but I don't think anyone's actually bought them yet.
Floating or swimming? Appropriate.
They're in I think they're in WA, is it? In Western Australia. I'm not sure. They're not down here in Melbourne, but they're about. But I'm not sure if many people are in the market price wise to buy them.
Right. And that's always been the discussion. It's a shame they don't go to someone who could do a good job and see if they are capable of, reproducing and captive breeding for the hobby, instead of
Reading them.
just the highest bidder. And I think someone told me, I can't remember exactly who, but someone told me there was a rumor that some had landed in the U.S. And I was actually kind of trying to dig around and find out if that was the case, if someone in the U.S. did have them. But I guess we'll just have to wait and find out, huh?
My understanding on hippocampus zebras is kind of like collecting dragons. That the few people that actually have permits to even be able to collect them, they're only permitted to collect like a single pair or two pairs, something to that effect. And because of the changes in barometric pressure, they have to be brought up in basically a hyperbaric chamber to maintain keep them alive as they head for the surface. So
Now, oops.
there's a lot of questions about how to actually keep them alive.
Hey, Harkins, and hey, Dylan, I see your question. I will say it in just a second. But now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first pair of zebras, weren't they found like literally close to the surface? I know you're right, Cheryl, that they're deep water and they have to be brought up carefully. But Marina, am I wrong? Or maybe I'm remembering it wrong. But weren't the first found like just kind of crazily floating in some weeds or whatever?
I'm not sure where they were found,
Okay,
but the people who are collecting them are definitely collecting more than one or two pairs at a time.
gotcha.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure if they're not in the hobby because they're rare just yet, or if it's just because whoever's finding them is just wants so much for them.
And Harkins Aquatics actually asked, with Australia closed down, how does this affect the hobby of seahorses? Are they not coming out? Are they not being?
Well, my reply is that if we listen to Chris, I don't. The only one down there really exporting to the U.S. is his company, and they don't want to export to the U.S. They've had problems with orders
Right.
getting through.
Right. So it's
So
just
I don't expect to see orders from Australia unless somebody's willing to put a lot of money up and not have the order guaranteed.
right, because I know. Sorry, go ahead.
Not shipping here to Canada because of the airline route disruption, because so many planes have been out of the air. They haven't got normal routes to be able to ship anything.
Well,
Gotcha.
it's like when I placed that order for some seahorses from Hawaii, it took 7 days to get to me.
No.
Yeah.
And it would be worse from Australia or other countries.
Well, I know that Ocean Reef Aquaculture, am I saying that right? Steve McLeod's company, they do it also, but it would be a case like Dan said, where somebody would have to pay a lot to get them. You know, I wish they would too, because I'd love to see more species, um, captive bred species in the hobby. But you know how it goes. I mean, anymore you can't really find. There's only one or two places to buy seahorses anymore. You know, and it's a bummer.
Well, yeah, a lot of that too is after the Cat 5 hit Vietnam and that whole area,
Mm.
it shut down a lot of the net pen raised stuff that was going on, which was a lot of what we were getting into this country and other countries. And we just, I talked with a friend of mine who owns a local fish store, and there's not even any seahorses on his manifests or on his, that he can buy right now.
Wow. I'm sure there's still ways. I'm sure there's still collectors out there. It's just, and it's just such we've talked about how hard it is to raise them, and I'm thankful for the smaller hobbyists that are doing it like Holly. But are you taking a break, Holly, or since you're getting along with the?
Yeah, I've got 8 juveniles right now. I have 6 females and 2 males. And then the ones in my display tank, um, I've got a young male that's trying. I just don't have any babies right now, so I don't really expect any real soon. He hasn't got his stuff together yet.
You just booby trapped yourself.
Right.
Yeah,
Never
could
say
happen.
that.
He could figure it out tomorrow, but
Yeah.
but so far I've been safe.
I have the exact opposite situation going on where one of my males, he has definitely claimed your female. And it's like, she's mine, everybody back off. But she's like, okay, what do you want me to do? She's still young, so
Scrappy Deuce claimed them, but yeah, he doesn't quite know what to do with them. So
right, right.
there's that.
But everything has gone well since the last time we talked. All the other seahorses are okay.
Well, I lost Sandy on
Right,
Saturday,
Yeah.
right.
and then I had one of my juveniles, one of the little males. He had like gas bubble disease around one eye. He got like a bunch of bubbles around his eye.
Mm,
And I put him in Diamox, and he's pretty much cured now. He's going to go home on Friday after his 5 days. So he'll
that's
be
good.
all right. But it was odd. It wasn't, I looked at him closely, and it wasn't Popeye because his eye was not popping out. It was just like a circle of bubbles around his eye.
Mm,
So,
Jeez. Actually,
but
and I want
everybody else is fine. So,
good. I'm glad to hear it. And I definitely want to hear how things are going for Marina, and I want to hear about Ray making changes. But quick question for all of you about bubbles, right? And I think Dan's answered this before and said that, the micro bubbles that would really affect seahorse getting pouch emphysema or gas bubble disease are so small we wouldn't see them, but correct me if I'm wrong. And my question is, I've been having so many ups and downs with this all-in-one tank, and one of the latest ups and downs is the keeping the not just the salinity, but the tank full, right? So what I've done is I've ordered an auto top off, and I think that's pretty much the only way. I'm curious, Dylan, if you have an auto top off on your all-in-one, because I'll literally wake up in the morning and yeah, I'm lazy. I probably didn't check well enough throughout the previous day, but the water has gotten so low in the compartment that it is spouting out bubbles. That's not something I have to worry about, is it? I mean, obviously I need to fix it, but I mean, no. Dan says no. Okay, good.
Nope.
All right.
Now,
So,
if that was the case, you couldn't run an air stone in your tank.
well, that makes sense. That makes sense. It just always freaks me out, because I just, ugh.
The problem is, even if you've got air in front of your pump on the tanks that we have, the pumps that we're using, they're low pressure pumps, and it takes a high pressure pump sucking air to drive those bubbles into super saturating the water. So
Not gonna, okay.
I don't worry about bubbles in the aquarium at all. Now, it is conceivably possible that a male could open his pouch to flush it over some bubbles and get some air trapped in that way, but I don't consider that gas bubble disease anyway.
Right.
That would
I
be a
had a
simple
male.
case. Yeah, that'd be a simple case of pouch emphysema, and in many cases, they can expel that air on their own.
Well, this male was one I raised, and he was dancing with a female. And every few minutes, he'd go over and hitch to an airline, and I had an air stone in there. He'd inflate his pouch with air and float to the surface. And
Yep.
after 3 pouchy backs in about 20 minutes, I took the air stone out. This is when I was real early on. And I realized micro bubbles like that are just not going to work with Seahorse. I named him Here's Your Sign.
Hey, Sam. Good to see you joining us. Love to see you join us. Well, okay. I feel better. Miss Marina, anything new with you? What's going on? It's been so long since we talked. Anything? Last time we talked, you were helping at the store, and I think you had one seahorse. So anything? What's going on with you?
Not too much has changed. Just been working most Thursdays, which is Wine Wednesday, for us. So haven't been able to jump on. I'm still got the one seahorse, but I'm bringing a friend home for her, hopefully this week or next week.
Yay.
Just because, yeah, very exciting. Just because it was quite warm here, and I don't feel comfortable quarantining seahorses when it's warm, just because the tank's quite small and heats up pretty easily. Um, she's been fine on her own. I'm sure she'll be happier with a friend.
Sure. And I can't remember. Oh, I'm sorry if I interrupted you. I can't remember. Do you have a rectus or what? You don't have a rectus. What species?
I've got Tudor.
Cuda. That's right. Okay. Awesome. And will you be posting? And the new friend is male?
I think so. I think I'm going to bring home a male.
Gotcha. So are there quite a few at the store you're working at? Is that where you're coming from, getting from?
Yes, a couple weeks ago we got in a big shipment from, or not a decent sized shipment of seahorses. Western Australia.
Oh, you were breaking up. What'd you say?
A couple weeks ago we got in a decent sized shipment from Chris from Seahorse Australia.
Gotcha. Nice. All right. Well, good to hear about that.
Yeah.
They're doing good. And so you said you were nervous about quarantining when it's warm, and because it's a small tank, and that's kind of what I was just saying. I'm dealing with is I'm not used to such a small tank, and so everything is drastic. Like if you don't have an auto top off, the water levels are drastically changing salinity, and it's just crazy. So I totally get what you're saying. But so did you just quarantine at the store, or what's your plan?
I think I'm going to bring one home and quarantine it. And
Gotcha.
it's pretty cold. It's coming into winter now, or it's winter here for us now. So it's getting cold in Melbourne.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, good. I can't wait to see. Will you be make sure to post and tag me when you post up that you've got a friend for her.
I will.
And you know what? Last question for you about that, because that's interesting, because that's a question a lot of people ask, all the time is, can a seahorse be kept alone? Is it a big deal? Will they, be lonely or whatever? But she's been fine for. And how long have you had her alone?
It's been quite a while now. Um, it's been a very long time. It's been at least a good few months. Since I had a group of 5 seahorses or 6 seahorses,
Mhm.
and lost all of them except her over the course of 2 weeks a while ago. Um, and she's been alone since then. But in saying that she's been alone, there are a couple other fish in there,
Mhm.
and I think she's very well entertained. There's a lot of flow in the tank. There's a lot of places for her to hitch. She's really, really active and doesn't seem unhappy. Whereas when she was in quarantine by herself, um, just for 2 weeks, she seemed really, really unhappy. So I think she's just entertained enough that she's okay. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think Dan, you've told me before that they're fine alone, but I that makes sense to me. Like if you're talking about a tank with just one seahorse and that's it, that might be totally boring for them, right? Or does it still not matter?
I don't know. I think each animal is going to react differently. I've known many people to keep a single seahorse with no problem,
Mm,
and I've seen cases where they lose their mate and they just fail to thrive afterwards.
mm. So it just depends on the seahorse. Gotcha. Well, Marina, I'm excited for you.
Have other fish too. I could see that because my other fish that I have with the seahorses hang out with the seahorses.
Mhm.
So they're all friends. So I think even if you just have some other fish, they'll buddy up.
And hey, I'm sorry about the pronunciation again, but Kya, if I'm saying that right, that was the person from last week, guys, that was asking questions. So feel free to ask any more. I think you said you did post in the group, but we haven't approved the post. Okay. Well, I will make sure that that's done as soon as we're done here. And yeah, so you can definitely ask any more questions right now. Seems to me that because you're here, the seahorses are still with you and doing well. I'm glad to see and hear that. But yeah, so just making sure you knew I see that you're here. Hello. And we'll make sure to get that post approved. Anyhow, Marina, I'm just excited for you. And this is for anybody. When you've had a situation that was devastating, as Marina went through, where like many of the seahorses, she doesn't know why, passed, and then the one was left. She's obviously been really careful to keep that seahorse for quite a while on its own, just make sure there's no more problems. But after all this time, is it pretty safe at that point?
I hope so.
I'm just trying to conversate. Everybody's like, yeah, sure, whatever. No, I think you'll do great, and I just can't wait to see. But good deal. Okay, well, I'm gonna jump to Ray real quick before I talk myself. Ray, did you say you're doing some expansion or changing things around?
It's downsizing.
Downsizing.
Yeah,
And
move it from the 90 down to 55.
how many seahorses?
Just the two abs.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Wow, that's kind of like a mansion for them, a 90-gallon tank for two abs. Whoo!
See, years ago when I imported these from Seahorse Australia, I brought in 6 abs, but I lost one after a month, and then in the years since then, the others have gone down the hill, and one was just earlier this year. It took a few months to die off, so now I'm left with two. Um, and as a matter of fact, it was 5 years ago this month. Uh, I think it was the 16th of June, so it's pretty close.
Hey,
Um,
that's a good record, 5-year-old seahorses. But go ahead.
well, I don't think that's good enough. I think I've had some live longer, but
Sure.
usually they were individuals that lasted longer than the ones that they were with originally. Um, and to be honest with you, I don't even remember how long a few of them actually live now. I know they're well past the 5 years and that, but with my memory, I can't pull it out now. I can go back to my records and dig it up, but I'm kind
You're
of
good.
losing interest in going backwards anymore.
I do have a question for you, Ray.
Yeah.
abs, from what I have seen, tend to swim differently than many other species of seahorses. And I was working with a public aquarium that had their abs produced fry, and the little suckers looked more like pipefish swimming around than they did like seahorses.
Couldn't prove it by mine.
Interesting. I'm just trying to figure out why they were going straight and swimming so fast.
Well, they do swim fast when they swim, but in my experience, they don't move around as much as many other species do. But when you feed, then they'll outdo anything. As soon as they see food, they go nuts.
That
Hey,
may have been the key.
Sorry. Hey, I wanted to say real quick, I do see the questions coming up in the comment section. Sam, feel free to answer away if I can't get to it, because we're talking about something else. But yeah, feel free, and I will end up asking the questions. And I'm going to start right now, starting at the beginning. Dylan's Little Hobby said, I have ChemiPure Blue. Where it sits, it's before the algae scrubber. It takes out organics too, so I'm wondering if it's not letting the algae scrubber grow as fast as I want. And that's a really good question, because in my 65-gallon tank, I realized after a very long time that because of the situation where I had my UV sterilizer, it was before instead of after the skimmer. Anyways, I had to switch it all around because of the placement. So anybody else have a thought on that? Like, should you have any kind of media that removes organics go before an algae scrubber?
I guess thinking about it, I would want the algae scrubber, which you're not paying out anything for, to take out as much as it could before depended on some purchase media to remove anything else.
I'm gonna say I agree too. I don't know which scrubber you have or how it's set up for your tank, but in my sumped tank with the scrubber, I put any kind of media like that I ever use after it, because it's a really good point. In fact, in the all-in-one, I kind of had this trouble, like where I have the K1, I had the K1 media going after the skimmer, and I was like, well, that doesn't make much sense, does it? Or Dan, what is your thoughts on that? Does it matter?
In terms of putting something before the scrubber,
Or, just in general, like in my case, I was putting the K1 media in the slot that came after the skimmer, and I realized that doesn't make much sense. Or does it?
why?
I don't
No,
know. I'm asking.
I would skim before the K1 media.
Oh,
But the question a moment ago about the ChemiPure, I would do that after the algae scrubber.
so what's the difference? Why is skimming good before
Well, you're
like
talking about going through media, okay?
okay.
And going through the media, you'd prefer to remove as much stuff as you can, so that you're only, going after the, I guess what you would say, the inorganic matter, not having the organic matter go through.
Ah,
In the
okay.
case of the, think of the algae scrubber the same as with the skimmer. It's removing stuff. Um,
So that should go first. I get you.
yep.
Gotcha. And then I did finally finish the Aquachar video, guys. It is up. Make sure you check that out, because the interview, he literally answers every question about the environmental impact, all that stuff. And so the only reason I'm bringing it up is because I'm thinking about the fact that I literally have my little bag of Aquachar in the sock where the water comes in, or it's the first thing it hits. So maybe I need to rethink that. I also have it. I used it to clear up a bacterial bloom and using it in like an internal spray bar type deal. You'll see it in the video, but it really helped me, and it's really cool to have something that acts as the biological and chemical media. But let me know, Dylan, if switching it around, if you're able to switch it around and put the ChemiPure after the the turf scrubber, and how that works out for you, because I do think that you'll get better growth when it's after. And wasn't somebody trying to say something? Okay, going on. Sam said, can't I always say it wrong. Is it Canes Marine? Canes Marine, I think, is still exporting. I'm not really sure, but really the bottom line is to get any seahorses here, it's going to take either a company or somebody or a bunch of somebodies who can really put together the money to get them here. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. And I know there was another important question somewhere. Sec. Okay. Um, Kya asked, in my country, we don't have mysis shrimp, so can I just feed seahorses brine shrimp for the rest of their lives? Cheryl's shaking her head. Don't everybody
They
talk at
lack
once.
they lack the lipid profile and nutritional content to be able to sustain them long term. Even when enriched, they're not going to have the same gut flora and the same lipid profile that you would get from, say, mysis shrimp or mysid shrimp, that kind of stuff. This is one of the problems I have, and one of my complaints with like Hikari and PE and all those. Those are not saltwater mysid, therefore they also lack the nutritional profile. I don't know,
Well,
Dan probably is better at this.
My customers years ago with the reed-eye, he fed them live adult brine shrimp exclusively and had them for a little over 4 years. Now, mind you, I was supplying them with the Algamax and spirulina powder that he was using to grow the Artemia on and as well to enrich them primarily with the Algamac. But I don't think it's that it can't be done. Like Artemia have great protein levels, and a lot of people argue with me and say they don't, but it's mainly they're arguing because they don't understand the difference in measurements. Where you've got one package of something is given specifications, it's in dry weight, and another one's given it in wet weight, and so there's a lot of misconception that has developed over nutrition just because of that. So basically, the brine shrimp have plenty of protein. It's just the fatty acid profile that you have to boost. And I was using the Algamac back then. Well, I still have it. I still use it now. But
so that's a question for Kya. Are you able to get enrichments like Algamax or however you say it? Or I don't know. Is Dan's feed still available or is it? No, it's not. Is it?
Um, at the moment, I don't have it available.
Okay.
I'm contemplating whether to start doing it again.
Oh. Well, I certainly hope you do. But I definitely want to hear Dan's thoughts on this. But Cheryl, with what you were saying too, and I don't know the correct answer, but it kind of confused me because if well, never mind. Um, Dan, what are your thoughts? Could you get by with just feeding Artemia?
Could you? Yes. Should
Is it
you?
good for him?
Probably not the best idea, but I think it really depends on how well you enrich them. I did it for almost 9 months when I first started.
Oh, wow.
I had a hard time converting wild caught to frozen, and as a consequence, I did strictly live feeds until my sister showed me the secret to converting. And she did it in a day, and I couldn't do it in 9 months.
Are you going to share the secret? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Patience and persistence. I mean, it just blew my mind that she had them eating frozen in a single day. And once I had confidence and had seen her do it 2 or 3 times, I've ordered reed eye in wild caught, not even have live foods on hand. I was that confident.
Wow. Wow. That's
But I wasn't
good.
that way in the beginning. I can tell you that.
Sure.
I remember those days too, where I didn't seem like I could convert anything to frozen.
Mm-hmm. And you guys have taught me it's tough love too. It's just sticking to it instead of giving in. But
Yep.
but yeah, and Cheryl, what I was gonna say is that if you're not happy with the nutritional profile of some of the frozen foods, I mean, literally many people keep the seahorses for many years with just the frozen foods. So I mean, obviously, do you want to do the best you can for the seahorses? Then make sure that you do. But I just wondered, like, why are people successful with the frozen feeds if they're not good enough?
It's not that they're not necessarily good enough, they're not optimal. They're not an
Gotcha.
optimal food source. There's a difference. And it's like, well, it's like my wild caught pair of combs that I had for over 7 years, and they were large adults when I got them. And they did very well, but I supplemented them a lot with a lot of live food as well, just for that reason. And it depends. I've got three males here that started out at roughly, I don't know, 3.5 inches. And they've been, one of them has been with me only a little over a month, and he's already well over 4 inches now. But
Wow.
I'm supplementing them, not just, they're not getting exclusively frozen mysis shrimp. They're getting amphipods, they're getting saltwater, different types of saltwater shrimp, things like that as well. And I think that may make a difference. It definitely makes a difference as far as I can tell in terms of growth.
Sure. Yeah,
You know,
I know
you
you're
know,
right. Go ahead, Dan.
I see the same thing working in a feed store with different animals. We see the people coming in, got to buy live foods for the reptiles. They won't eat anything but live foods, and trying to explain to them how to teach them to eat freeze dried and canned and whatnot. And then with the dogs, we see the same thing with the foods. Some people go out and buy some of the cheap dog food that's primarily corn, and it's getting the adequate diet for each animal, us, the animals, etc., is sometimes a bit of work. Um, how many people eat the correct diet?
Not me.
Guilty.
Right. I was just gonna say, right? And no, great. Thank you for talking about that a little more. And Kya, I'm wondering what country are you in? Because she also said that in her country, seahorses are notorious for dying within about a week. That makes me so sad. And I just wonder why they're even available there if you can't get mysis or ways to feed them. Still wondering if you can't get enrichments. But also, she said that she put them in with clownfish. I'm sorry, she or he, I don't know. I apologize. But put them in with clownfish, and the clown got sick and died. That's not usually what we hear, right? It's usually the seahorse that gets sick, isn't it? I mean, have you heard of people adding seahorses and then the clownfish get sick?
It can happen, but it may have been something already wrong with the fish to begin with. And
Hmm.
it makes me suspicious what's going on in the tank anyway. Because if you lose the seahorse within a week afterwards, who knows what was going on.
Right. Well, and I'm wondering the country she's from because that chain of supply, it matters. If
It,
they've
it
had to.
could, but think back to I say think back. Cheryl can relate a little bit to this, as can Ray. Is back in the early 2000s, very few people. I mean, most people were buying wild caught seahorses, and many were feeding strictly live foods. It was all they could get, and some people were feeding ghost shrimp, some people were feeding artemia, whatever they could get their hands on, and there was people that would I forget her name, used to buy reed eye, train them to frozen, and then sell them for about 4 times the going rate. Um, it's just because they were already trained to frozen food. They were believed to be that difficult to eat frozen food.
Yeah. Was it Beth?
So
I think it was Beth. Anyways, go ahead.
So, I think in some of these other places, you just have to look at what you can get, what sources you have, and you have to have a steady source to feed them. But I don't think it has to be frozen foods. Um, and I think in some of these areas, they're going to develop over time. If you've got hobbyists that are persistent at trying to keep seahorses, well, there becomes a market. And as the market matures, you'll see a change in what's available.
Well, Dan, it's like Tim in when he was doing his dwarfs. He used to propagate Melina Selena for them constantly. And more recently, I've just read somebody that posted on Facebook about why don't you try getting some and propagating yourself? Or this is for another individual. And I posted back that I know somebody that did this for a number of years and had very good success with dwarfs. So sometimes it's a matter of honing your skills to be able to propagate what they need.
I would agree.
Gotcha. Sorry, I was reading comments. Sorry. And yeah, well, one thing that came out of what was just said too is I'm wondering if you can get like other shrimp, like ghost shrimp or something like that. Because anything's better than nothing, right? I'm just not
It
sure.
is, but ghost shrimp that you buy, it depends on what you're buying. You really need to look at what they're actually selling and calling ghost shrimp because that's that's like saying I bought a seahorse. It doesn't tell you what species.
Yeah,
Um,
True.
and down here in South Florida, when you're buying ghost shrimp, 9 times out of 10 it's freshwater shrimp.
exactly.
Mm,
And if it rains a week later, I can go along the ditches with a net and get all kinds of ghost shrimp. I mean, they're just
mm,
very plentiful down here, easy to collect. But is it the proper food? Is the profile correct for feeding seahorses long term?
gotcha. Yeah, total side note, but I went to order live mice. I usually went to Socks in Florida. You know they're shutting down. I was so sad to read everybody's shutting down. Everybody's
Well,
going away.
Paul Sachs is up there, and his son was lending a hand, and in fact, he was breeding seahorses for a while.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't think the rest of the family has the same.
Uh,
It's changed going to the younger generation. Let's put it that way. I
sure.
think Paul's well into retirement age.
Which I completely understand and I get it, and I mean good for him. It just shucks, man, because that was my resource and I knew that they'd always be good, and he was clear about which shrimp was which, and I liked the company. They weren't as expensive as everywhere else. It was just nice. But I get it. That's why we need more people in the younger generation who are, into this thing, into it to start doing these things. We need more people to really seriously get into breeding and, seahorses and mice and shrimp. Go ahead.
If it was more profitable, Kelly, you would
I
see
know.
people doing it. The problem is that most of the people that are into breeding realize very very low profits.
Mm, it's such a shame. I mean, is there any fix to that? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
do
it's
you
called
think people?
inflation.
Well, I was just gonna say, do you think people wouldn't pay for them if they were more?
Well, it's funny because before I closed down, if kept my prices below $100, I could move seahorses almost as quick as I could produce. But as soon as I broke that $100 barrier, the sales would just plummet on whatever species was more than $100. And that was, of course, about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Um, I think there's a cap of what people are willing to spend. And what happens is when the price goes up too much, now they start looking for cheaper sources. Now you start seeing more wild caught, more
Mm,
subpar seahorses on the market. And,
right.
it's unfortunately the cost of rearing in the U.S. is drastically higher than most of the other places. I don't know about Australia, but especially in the Orient, they can do it so much cheaper. The Vietnamese, when they had the net pens going, their workers were earning $1 a day.
Mm,
And now Florida's one of those states that's passed a law where they're going up to $15 an hour for minimum wage. I
right.
mean, I can't turn a profit with an employee at $15 an hour.
Right. People don't usually see that side of the coin, right? I totally get it. And just out of curiosity, what if they started doing it right though? Would that make any difference? Like what if instead of net pens they actually did things the way you do them? Would that change anything or just not going to happen?
Well, it could change things, but well, it's going to change a whole lot of things, but it's also going to increase their costs in terms of rearing. So their prices would go up some as a result. But keep in mind, even ORA, which hires many people that have their bachelor's degree, start them out in the $10 to $12 range with a 4 year degree working in aquaculture.
Just
And
crazy.
you know, and ORA is not a, you know, they're not rolling over in cash.
Hmm. I know it's a no win. I mean, on both sides, I get it. Um, I just I sit here and think, man, we should just ship Dan off over there to teach him how to do it right, so that they could raise seahorses. The price would at least be less than here, even though I don't like to think that people are making $1, an hour or a day or whatever, because that's terrible. But I'm just saying, if they were doing it right, at least the. But then again, you've got the crazy shipping, and it takes forever in the supply chain and all
Well,
that. So.
yeah, it does get crazy. My sister and I way back when we started, we contemplated the idea of setting up an operation in Costa Rica for the breeding purposes, and then shipping them up here to sell. And um, multiple reasons, but one of the big things that kicked in was CITES that really prevented us from doing that.
Right, right. It just seems like every time you look at any of these situations, even when people are trying to do, like, they're trying to do something good, they don't see the negative effects on the other areas or whatever. But um, and Harkins Aquatics, yep, labor is the largest factors, absolutely. And I just wanted to say to Kia also that Sam in the comment section that's giving you her thoughts is extremely good with seahorses, been doing this a long time, had to deal with wild caught, so she's giving you good advice for sure. And yeah, it's funny though, like I don't even see places where you could buy wild caught seahorses. Are they out there? Am I just,
Oh yeah.
where are they? Like I don't even see seahorses at stores anymore. I don't see them anywhere.
Just Google um, hippocampus combs or hippocampus reedi. There's all kinds of people. The thing is, if you read the reviews on many of these, they're based stateside, but there's a lot of complaints also with people not receiving product
Mm-hmm.
or them arriving DOA, stuff like this, and they don't stand behind them. And this is where some people miss out. It's like, oh, that looks like a cool seahorse. I'll grab that one. Well, they're not thinking in terms of it's wild caught, it needs to be dewormed, yada, yada, yada.
Right. It's a process to get, a wild caught seahorse to the point where it's going to be like captive bred seahorse and live for as long and do as well. For sure. That's interesting. I wonder if my, I don't like algorithms or my search history or whatever is causing me not to see them, because at one point I did search by seahorses and couldn't find anything. I mean, the same, the few usual suspects, but
They
just.
show up in the local fish stores here in California. The ones that I would sell to, the ones that will take seahorses,
Hmm.
they tell me they get them in sometimes. I
Well.
think what it is their bycatch of,
Hmm.
when people collecting, other stuff and come across them and get them.
Hmm.
The
Well, and I
biggest problem I see with wild caught seahorses is what they go through before they get to the consumer,
right.
because in many cases they're bycatch. So it, that in itself often stresses and harms the animal. Um, if you look at how the collectors do it down in Florida, I say the collectors, the bycatch people, they're pulling them out of a net, they're throwing them in a 5 gallon bucket, and that they may or may not be fed properly for anywhere from a couple of days to a week or so till they go to someone who then either wholesales them or sells them, usually wholesale to a store, and then who knows how long they sit in a store and what they've been fed before the consumer gets them. Where with captive bred, typically, they're going straight from the breeder either to a wholesaler or directly to the store or to the consumer. And especially when it goes to the consumer, they've had a whole lot less stresses involved, and success rate is higher because of that. I don't think that captive bred or wild caught, either one is necessarily better than the other. I just think it's different methods that they end up going through before they get to the consumer.
Right.
Well,
And just what a hobbyist is capable of doing, because, if someone like you gets a pair or whatever of wild caught to condition and turn into brood stock that is used to captive breed for the hobbyist. That's totally different than, someone like me getting a pair of wild caught and not being able to figure out how to wean them or whatever. And so I just want for the record to say I wasn't searching for wild caught. I just meant I was surprised that I didn't see it because everybody else talks about seeing them. And I do know that you can, like, I know the stores that are near me, they can order them in, but it makes me fearful too that they won't actually be captive bred. And I've just noticed that places like Live Aquaria, which I never really, I wouldn't buy my seahorses there anyways, but they just don't have them anywhere. Everywhere seems to be out of stock. So I don't know. There's no
Well,
answer. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. The thing is, if you really want to bring in brood stuff that are wild caught and modify your gene pool, your best bet is basically to know the collector, have somebody that collects them, gets them to you ASAP, and you
Or do it
still need to
yourself.
know you need to know how to convert them to frozen, and you have to have everything on hand already to be able to do that. And I mean that's the optimal way. And even then, it still takes time to condition them and potentially deworm them, etc., to get them to the point that they're happy, healthy, and nice and fat and ready to reproduce. I mean, you've had a lot more experience than I have, Dan, doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, my experience has been that when I collect the seahorses myself, I've had no losses whatsoever.
Wow.
And when I've ordered them in, I've had varying degrees of success. And if we stick with just Erectus for the second, I've had batches that came in that, 20 or 30. I was bringing them in for researchers at the time. And out of batches of 20 or 30, I'd lose one or two that we would call, based on immediate observation.
Sure.
I've also had batches where we lost, 70% of them.
Be quiet.
When it comes to other species, especially stuff like barbs, I mean, when I decided I was going to start breeding H. barbary, the first batch I brought in was a dozen. I had somebody in LA go in, David Mulcahy went in and handpicked them for me and
Wow.
shipped them to me. And I lost them all within 2 weeks. Then I did,
Oh,
I think it was 24 of them. I had the same exact result. And, you know, my start with Barbary was a result of getting some that were um, coming out of Australia that were captive bred, and that's when I started having success in keeping them and breeding them.
wow. So it really is about who you know, where you get them, and what they've been through, and
Yep,
geesh.
H Combs wild caught, H Barbary wild caught, Spinomosis is well, however you pronounce it, wild caught. All of those can be extremely difficult. They just, I think that they don't handle the stresses as well as some of the other species.
And that is what it boils down to. I hope there's a Dan Jr. coming along somewhere. But I just wanted to point out, hey to Chimp, how are you? And also say that Harkins Aquatics, when you mentioned sea-dwelling creatures, is sea-dwelling creatures like a wholesale? I can't remember.
Wholesale out of California.
Okay. All right. So you'd have to go through someone else to get them. And I'm wondering if they offer captive bred. And I'm not even looking for any more
They
seahorses
used
because I
to.
love my tank. But go ahead,
They
Dan.
used to offer. They used to offer captive bred.
Gotcha. Um,
But it's difficult for any of them to get any wholesale purchases. I'm not selling wholesale anymore, and Alyssa is trying to keep up with the retail. So there's really not much of an opportunity for the wholesalers to buy stuff unless they go overseas.
gotcha.
Well, and from what I'm hearing, they're not even buying those on sales lists anymore in most instances.
Well, I believe Ananda is still producing seahorses, but just not the quantities that he used to.
Uh,
He's over in Sri Lanka.
well,
You
and
know,
thank goodness. Go ahead.
at one time he was producing about 95% of all reed-eye being sold.
Yep. Well, I was going to say thank goodness for Alyssa, Seahorse Savvy, for still remaining a great captive breeder. And, Cheryl's experience with Ocean Rider gives me lots of hope that, they're doing a great job. I don't have any personally from them, but, I trust Cheryl's judgment. Um, And so, I just thank goodness for them. It's just you don't see. Well, I guess Ocean Rider has a lot of different species, right? But they're really expensive.
Well, the thing is with the Ocean Rider, and I've always been curious about them. Never in 15 years, never bought any from them. And
Hmm.
when they did their sale, I was like, ah, let's see what they really have got. It
Yep.
was more curiosity than anything. And I must say, I have been impressed with what they sent me.
And you can see those pictures and videos in Seahorse Sources group. Hey, let's real quick because the conversation's going on in the comment section. Let's have a discussion about why temperature is important and all of that. So why do seahorses get sick when the tank gets hot?
Primarily Vibrio because it increased in pathogenicity as temperatures rise. And that's true with other types of pathogens as well. You get above 74 degrees, and you may be looking at flesh-eating bacteria, which is Vibrio in the Gulf of Mexico. And it's one of the things they warn people about. People don't necessarily pay attention, but it is a very real aspect. The other thing is, uh, obviously, some of the species are cool water or cold water species.
Mm,
Potbellies are not going to make it at probably not going to make it at 72 or 73.
Well,
right.
Cheryl, I agree with what you're saying, but to the hobbyists that's out there, what they don't understand is but they live in temperatures that are warmer than our tanks. So
Right.
why doesn't that happen in the wild? And the answer to that is that in the little box that we keep, that we try to keep an ecosystem, we have what we call a recirculating system. We don't have a wide
Well,
expanse for things to be diluted and for nature to take care of it. In the ocean, you have or estuaries or wherever, you have a huge body of water where things don't get concentrated very quickly. Whereas in a tank, organics build up quickly, and nature's way of dealing with that is to have more organisms feed on those organics, which is often ciliates and bacteria.
Mm,
So the warmer the temperature, the faster those ciliates and those different species of bacteria grow. And then the seahorses themselves, unlike most fish, have a kind of a weird immune system in that they don't have the gut associated lymphoid tissue that most fish have for adaptive immunity. They do have some forms of immunity, but it's poorly understood and it's kind of wacky the way that it works. And to be quite honest, it appears to be very slow in terms of being adaptive, if it's adaptive at all. So, when you're looking at a little box and you increase that temperature, things grow faster, especially if you don't have adequate filtration or if you're overfeeding, overstocked, and any other stressors come into play.
Yep, and I've got a question for Marina here in a minute. If you're still here, tell me if you got to go because I do have a question for you. But in the comment section, Harkins said temp scares me the most because it gets to like 116 degrees where he's at, and it was today. Oh my goodness. What do you advise people that live in hotter climates to get a chiller? Or I mean, because like I feel bad. I always tell people, well, shoot, I just keep my central air at under 74, and the tank stays under 74. But for people in hotter climates, is it what do you advise? Chiller, fans, what?
Well, you
well,
you can go with the chiller, but you still can do the AC. And one could argue that if the AC goes out, you need the chiller. But um, you know, if you lose the AC, it's probably due to a power failure, so you're gonna lose the chiller anyway. So,
Right,
I think it depends upon how cool you keep the house.
yeah,
right. And
it's
Dan,
like,
we hope that you're still gonna. I know you're so busy, but we hope you're gonna do the emergency episode soon. But anyways, go ahead, Cheryl.
Working on it.
I know.
well, it's like the last 2 days, we're supposed to be, we're getting quite warm here. And our utility company sent out messages. Oh, everybody turn their thermostats up to 78. Well, you know something? Ain't gonna happen here.
Right.
And not only that, I used blower fans because I have too many tanks. If I tried running a chiller on every tank, I'd be in trouble. but I have these turbine blower fans that are really easy to clean, and they will drop it depending on whether I'm using at lowest speed. It will drop a tank 3 degrees and maintain the tank at 3 degrees less than what it would without the fan on. On the highest speed, it'll drop it 5 to 6 degrees.
Right. I
And
know Holly's used like water bottles too. Go ahead, Cheryl. Sorry.
I keep plenty of water bottles, cold packs. I have a lower half of my freezer and my refrigerator is full of packs. Just my safety valve, so to speak.
Hmm.
But it's one of those things where if
Right.
well, I was one of the lucky ones when we had the big freeze. I know a number of people that lost everything in their tanks because they didn't have any power for 5 days,
Right.
and their tanks got down into the 40s. And these are reef tanks.
Jeez. Well, and with the temperature, Dylan's asked, what's the temperature that you should really be scared if the tank hits that temperature? And
If it
so
gets
could
to
we have
73, I'm turning on the fans, and I'm going to be seriously considering looking at. I want to keep it below 74.
gotcha.
I used to tell my customers that, the perfect temperature is probably 72 to 74. Ideally, you want to keep it in the mid 70s or lower. And I always try to make sure they keep it below 77. At 78, I think you should start take proactive action. And if you get above 78 and stay there for any period of time, look out because there's a high likelihood that if something goes, it's going to go quick and it's going to be too late before you can react.
Mm-hmm.
I
I mean,
worry at 74, I start like Cheryl. That's when I add the ice packs and fans and stuff right around 73 because what I found with the water is it gradually gets warmer as the day goes on. It's always behind the temperature of the house.
yeah.
Mm,
Well,
Yeah, so
over the years,
I
three
try to
times during the spring, we attempted to stretch out the time before we had to run the AC full time. And we allowed our tanks to get up to 78 degrees.
ooh.
And each time, those three times, each time we had episodes of losses that once they kicked in, it took a month or two to get corrected
Yeah.
and get back on track. And it's interesting because I sat there and argued with Dr. Lynn and his underlings when they did their study on H. erectus and said that 80 to 82 degrees was the ideal temperature for raising them for commercial purposes.
Mm,
And we go back to what we were saying before. They were using a flow-through system where
Exactly.
I'm doing recirculating systems. So they had continuous ocean water running through their systems. The water wasn't being recirculated.
That makes a huge difference. That combined too is I know a lot of people that try to use sumps that are too small for what they've got for the tank. I mean, I run a 29-gallon sump on a 40-gallon tank, and so I have a lot more water volume moving through than a lot of people do, which makes a difference as well.
I can vouch for that one because with this 40 all in one, like I said, and that's the other thing that I just wanted to make sure we hit on real quick. Is when we're talking temperature too, is there any like from this to this that is dangerous on a daily basis? So like if your temperature goes from 69 to 72, are you good? Like
You're
throughout the
fine.
day?
You're fine there. Just remember this. You know, the three of us, Ray, Cheryl, and I, have been doing this since 2003, 2004, in that time frame.
Hmm.
And I can't think of anybody who, with two exceptions, who have kept seahorses at 78 degrees or higher for 5 years. But I can name dozens of people who have kept seahorses for 5 to 10 years, and in some cases longer, that kept their temperatures at 75 or lower.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Proof is in the pudding. I know
It
that it is.
depends. I mean, if you're running a massive flow through system, well, it's like Ocean Rider. They're pulling in water out of the ocean
Yep.
They're running through major filtration. They're running it through their systems, and they have a constant turnover of water. So your pathogens are not sitting there in your tank waiting for something to get a hold of. And this is why we talk. I mean, it used to be seahorses need low flow. Nobody was using skimmers. I mean, the list goes on. And since that time, we've learned that they can handle a lot of flow. They like flow. A skimmer, a large skimmer, is essential.
Hmm.
And give them the more room you give them, the more room they're going to use.
Well, I would just say I'm going to literally have a clip to show you guys next week, and I'm going to show it to you live so that we can discuss it because I have been thinking from the time that I set up this all-in-one. It's oddly shaped. You'll see it in the clip when I show you guys next week. But the bottom line is I'm a big proponent of the flow thing, you know. Seahorses love high flow and blah 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 blah. But Dan has said multiple times, actually Abby said multiple times, that it needs to be distributed in different ways, like in different areas, not just one.
Bounce, you need to
And
bounce it off of walls, rocks, things like that, so they
right,
don't get blown around.
right.
But
So
they will jump into the flow. They will get into the flow, and they
of
seem
course, of course, they love the flow, and I'm not saying they don't, but in this tank, which you guys will see next week, literally the space between like the width, because of the fact that there's compartments on the back and it's just a 40 breeder, the width is like, oh my gosh, that they actually have to from here to here is very small. I mean, like really small, you'll see. And because there's two returns that are literally you can adjust them to go one way or the other, you know, but it's still going to smack against that wall. And so the whole thing, it's not really high flow. It's probably only 500 gallons per hour, but they're all, you know, crouching in rocks and stuff. So I bought some lock line. I'll talk more about it next week, but I'm going to use Abby's advice and kind of try to distribute differently so that one's going up and one's maybe hitting the back or something. So the whole point is areas of low flow and high flow, you know, so that they can pick, right? And just
well.
make sure you're not having buildup.
Yeah, I have multiple returns. It's going to sound crazy, but uh, the typical two returns that you get when you have a drilled tank, I'll usually add a couple extra returns to that tank because I want them going in all different directions.
Yep.
It helps keep it clean, and it tends to. I also have it set up in such a way that all the detritus moves into one corner, which makes cleaning very easy for me.
Sure,
But
and that's what I was gonna. I'm sorry, Cheryl, I didn't mean to interrupt you again, but Harkins Aquatics, absolutely diverted flow. And please come next week so I can show you this clip because once I get the lock line, I really do need to figure it out because what I've got now is it's smacking against the glass and causing this too much flow up front, and then behind, and like it's making the seahorses go to the back because that's the only place they can get any, you know, not smacked with flow. And so literally it's all this too much smacking the glass in the front, and then in the back it's not even moving the snail poop on the ground, and I'm like, this is not cool. So I'm going to need you guys, you smart people like you, to help me figure out how to make this lock line go which way, whatever. And I was
I have
also
one.
irritated because I watched a video on the tank that I bought, and it told me 3/4 inch lock line, and I bought it, and I had to return it because it was too big. Anyways, go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, I, I run wave makers in my
Hmm.
Seahorse tank. I don't have them on all the time because I want them to go on and off. I want them to move the detritus into a particular area so I can clean it up. That's their primary function. But what's really comical is the way the seahorses will swim over there, and you can watch them. They're looking at it. They know they're going to get get hit with a jet,
Right.
and they'll just right into it.
Yep. No, I know. One of my favorite pictures to post is of a seahorse sleeping, hitched to the cord that came to the wave maker, laying on the covered wave maker, his head bopping. I mean, he literally has his
Oh
head
yeah.
over the edge, going blah 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 blah. And you know, and every time I post it, people are like, "Oh, you're evil, you're cruel," and I'm like, "Dude,
No, that
he
they will.
chose that spot."
I have had Combs fry, that were only, I don't remember, probably at most 2 months old, actually hitch to the returns
Mhm.
and sit there and get blasted back and forth.
Right.
Now,
Well, again, go
they
ahead.
didn't get there by themselves. I mean,
Right.
well, they did, but they had to work at it.
Right. And again, I'm not at all going against what I've always said that seahorses love flow. I just want to make a point of showing that sometimes people might think we're crazy saying that because they might have a tank like mine where the flow is just not working the way it's set up originally. So next week we'll kind of do it together and you guys can help me figure it out and get it right because I know I'm right because two of the seahorses are from Dan, so I know they're peanut butter and jelly eating fools, right? And bottom line is, they are hitching and not doing much until I turn the flow off, and then when I turn the flow off, they're all over. So I just know it's just not properly distributed. So while we say they love flow, it does have to be distributed right, and that was one of Abby's big points.
Well,
So.
just don't do what I did. I added a power head to one of my tanks that had some sand in it,
Oh.
and wasn't paying attention, and it was a lot stronger than I thought it was. The next thing I knew, I had a sandy tank everywhere.
Jeez, yeah, I've done that in my reef tank. But yeah, so next week we're gonna focus in on flow, y'all. Just a heads up. We will get some guests in soon and hopefully Dan will do his emergency thing soon. But next week I want your help. You're gonna help me for once. And I do see that Kiara wants to talk a little bit more about food. But real quick, Marina, I'm gonna throw the ball way in left field again, as I always love to do. And if you're still here, I was wondering for you, at the store that you're working at, are the seahorses kept separate from other fish or with other fish?
They're kept separate from other fish, mostly because there's quite a few in at a time, so they take up a whole tank that really is overstocked with seahorses as it is. Also, we quarantine all our fish except for the seahorses. The seahorses stay on their own. All other fish go through TPM. So then we can't mix them for that reason as well.
So it's like what Kya was saying, where it's the seahorses that you're more worried about. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, it's a bit of both. I don't think it benefits any of the fish to mix them. We have 3 tanks for seahorses, and they're all full. So we don't really want to be adding any more fish in there.
I wish I lived closer to you, but because that sounds cool. I wish my stores had that and had that process where you're using tank transfer method on fish and then keeping things separate that shouldn't be together. That's awesome. I'm gonna have to repost your awesome little sheet where you can look at tank mates too. But anyways, I just wanted to grab you back into the conversation because I love when you come.
Don't add a grouper to a seahorse tank.
Oh no.
Grouper?
Big old fish.
Oh dear.
Yeah. No.
We had a customer put them in their reef tank, with a tank, but a huge Romini tank, and the tank just bit its head off. Its mouth was just so big, and the seahorses were so small in comparison. I don't think it was trying to hurt it, but it just swam past and just ate them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's probably.
Oh,
You've got to be careful what they go with, but it seems, it seems quite common sense, but I guess some people just don't think of it. You really can't put them with anything huge or anything aggressive.
Absolutely. And I know
Dan's got seahorses swimming behind him now.
Yeah, Dan, are you showing us something? Do I need to make you big?
No.
Oh, you're just having fun?
Yeah, I just decided to flip it around. I was looking to see if I had any pictures of the fry where they get in the flow, and even the fry themselves will sometimes get right up there in the flow and go around and around.
Yeah. They're funny. I've had them hitched to the returns. I've had combs actually go in about inch and a half, 2 inches, and actually hitch to the returns and get their bounced back and forth on the returns.
Yeah, anybody's had done fry for any period of time have seen that, or should have seen that. I should say.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things. I know that's when it's time to turn up the flow.
Yeah.
They
Right.
can hit
And
to it. I ain't got enough flow.
right. And last comment about flow is I would love, well, I just can't wait till next week to show you guys because I would love to add a wave maker. And I actually have, like I said, the aqua chart in one of these little internal spray bar filter type deals that I have on low. But it's just such tight quarters. Anybody out there who's done an all-in-one or a smaller 30-gallon Seahorse tank, I really would love to hear your comments. I want you to come next week and talk to me because I'm just struggling with this. I'm really struggling. And I know I'm used to sumps, but this has been like, I don't like the, oh, I'll tell you next week. Anyways, and Ray,
Do you guys have Nero 3?
what was it?
Do you guys have Nero 3s and Nero 5?
Nero 3s. I don't even know what that
The
is.
wave makers?
Oh, I'm guessing that's like, hang on, let me look it up. Hang on one second. Nero,
Nero 3. Yeah, it's a wave maker.
oh, from Aqua Illumination. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Because they come with the guard, and they
Yep.
can be turned down quite a lot. That might work.
Well, right, and I think you're right, and I think once I use the lock line to distribute the returned water differently, everything's going to change, and then I'll be able to do a lot. But you're going to be like, "What the heck, Kelly? Why did you buy this tank?" Because it's just it's an odd shape. It's a 40 breeder, but they've got the compartment built in, so the width is just nothing. It's very long, but not wide, and so I don't know. Maybe all in ones that are cube shaped are much different. So, but we'll chat about it next week. And I wanted to clarify really quick that when I said Ray doesn't do friends, I was just kidding around. But Seahorse Sources Group is the place to be. I'm going to make sure that you have been admitted, Kya, as soon as we're done. And that's where you can reach all of us in one place without, having to wait on any one person. But go ahead, Cheryl.
Get an Ecotech Marine, quiet drive, Wi-Fi as your wave maker. It'll cost you several $100s, but those things are amazing. And you can program it in all kinds of different waves.
Right. Well, you know what? My favorite one is the Max Respect, I think it's called. It's a long wave maker that goes like this. I think it's ice cap. Anyways,
I call them gyres. Yeah, I call them gyres.
yeah. I love those, and that's what I used on the 90-gallon, but it's just, you'll see, I don't even think it fit in this all-in-one, and it'd obviously be way too much flow. I have wave makers sitting around that I could use. It's just, well, you'll see next week. And can any of you, can you quickly pop a link into the chat on YouTube with the Seahorse Source Group site link? If not, I will, but maybe Harkins if you are able, or anybody who's with us, Sam, so that
Dan's breathing underwater through his microphone right now.
Dan's awesome. But all right, guys, what else? Anything? Oh, Ray, I did want to ask you really quick. I see you guys talking in the comments, and I just wasn't able to jump to it quick enough. But did you guys find a resolution about food?
Not totally. He's going to see if he can order in some krill. Before, when we were talking, I thought he was feeding live adult brine, and so I was speaking about enriching them, but he's feeding them frozen brine, and that's not going to cut the mustard.
Oh yeah, that's like the worst, right?
So anyway, we'll try and help out through the Seahorse Source Facebook, and also I'll connect with him on Messenger and see if we can get something that might help. But it's going to be difficult when he's dealing with that kind of temperature, and like here in Canada, no meds. So if we can find a way to get the temperature down, that'll be a start. But he's got to do something about the white spots on the tail, because I'm sure that's the start of the bacterial problem. But anyway, I'll get in touch with him on the messenger.
Sure. And Harkins, thank you. Seahorse Savvy Group is great too, but please put Seahorse Sources Group also, because that's kind of where we are.
Hey, Dan, are those erectus behind you?
Yes.
That's so.
They are 7 days old in that picture. That was done on 6/18 of 2018.
Yeah, they look the size is erectus.
Yeah, they're 1 week olds.
Yeah.
Wrong person. Hang on, I was trying to make Dan big. There we go. Aw, look at the babies. So cute.
There's
And Dan disappeared.
Dan disappears.
Yeah, well that's a 90-gallon tank, and I'm showing about 1/4, 1/3 of it maybe on one side. Um, and if you'll notice, the other thing that I always get a kick out of is how everybody fights to keep them from getting to the top. If you'll notice, I make no effort at keeping them from the top.
I don't either. Hey.
And if you, all that white specks, those are Artemia.
Mm-hmm.
If you can see them on the thing, but it's they're really conglomerated at the top.
This is one of your 90s?
Yes, 90-gallon round tub.
Yeah, I can tell just watching them that the way they were swimming and the size and all that they had to be erectus. Oh.
Geez, I'd never know of any species looking at them like that.
Yeah, that little,
well,
I wouldn't know either.
You've raised a bunch of species, you can tell. So if you've done enough of them, you kind of get an eye for it. There's little subtle differences between each species.
It's like my combs fry at the same age do not look anything like my erectus fry. They definitely don't look anything like Indians or Cruda. They're just erectus get much bigger. What I'm watching is the way some of them are curling their tails, similar to what I typically see in combs.
That's a great sign.
Yeah.
And that means that they're not expelling very much effort. They're just kind of drifting along, feeding.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, good point. When we're talking flow for fry, it's very different. So repeat that. You said when they're what? It's a great sign.
So when they have their tails curled, like you see some of these guys, and they're just kind of drifting along, if you will.
Yeah.
They're not expending much energy, and as a result, they're feeding without using much energy, which means they'll grow faster. When people set up these chrysals where they're pushing them down, the seahorse is trying to get back to the top, or the flow is wrong, they're expending a lot of energy. So as they're eating food, that instead of that energy going towards growth, it goes towards being used.
Well, and it's like my combs will typically keep the tails curled and swim, pretty much free swimming for the first 2 to 3 weeks after they're born. And after that, they finally start hitching more by accident, as far as I can tell. But I make no effort to keep them off the surface because that's counterproductive. All you're doing is spinning them. You don't want them in a washing machine.
Well, they're programmed to go to the surface to feed. That's where most of the plankton layer is that they're feeding off of.
Right. Makes sense. Hey, Chris,
I'm just cracking up watching them.
Yes, it makes a great viewing.
I want that little orange one.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah,
I saw you jumped in. What's up? Did you want to share something, or are you just hanging?
No, I just came because I know you had talked about the lock line. I don't know if you wanted to talk any more in depth about that. I know you're going to talk about it next week, but.
Well, yeah, I'm going to talk about it next week, but I do want to know why I'm getting this wrong. Listen, I watched a video that said it was the tank is Cobalt Aquatics Q40 is what it is. That's what I ended up with. It was at a local store. Remember, I had all the trouble trying to get a tank shipped, and I really want to do a comparison tank with the company you recommended. But in the meantime, I set this up, and it's just oddly shaped. But when I said, okay, I got to fix this flow, I looked at the video from Coral View saying, and it said, and this is 3/4 lock lines, so you can buy your own and do whatever you want with spray bars or whatever. I bought 3/4. It's way too big. Huh?
I think it's half inch.
You think it's half? Because I didn't know whether to replace it with half or quarter. How do you measure that?
Now, I believe it's inside diameter.
Okay. So, okay.
You measure the inside diameter of the
Okay.
lock line.
All right. Well, that helps me a little bit.
I have a problem because I can just look at it and tell you what size it is. So,
Right.
yeah, but they even sell a lock line that you can turn into a strip, kind of like a sprayer bar. So you might want to look for that.
Really? See, I was just gonna get the same that I've used on the 65. In fact, I can show you. You guys talk about something else. Is there anything else to talk about real quick? While I go grab this? You guys never shut
This is a
up. And
very
then when I say talk, nobody does. No, I'm kidding.
Sorry, I was typing.
I'm just saying this could be a very pleasant screensaver.
Right?
Of
Amen.
bobbing around and
Okay, listen, I'm gonna
easy.
go grab it, but Ray, if it goes to downtime, nobody's talking, talk about food. All right, I'll be right back.
Just back to sort of with the temperature and the chiller situation. I think as well sometimes it's worth weighing up the cost of a chiller. Sometimes with the cost of the chiller, you can get a significantly larger tank, which is going to swing in temperature a lot less and can sort of do the same job as well as have a lot of other benefits. So that's something I recommend to people if it's an option. We get quite hot in Melbourne in the summertime, and I've never run a chiller, and the tank has never gone above 22 or 23 degrees, I don't believe. So that's another option as well, is just having a bit of a larger tank. You've got a bit more time if something does go wrong to try and sort it out.
Yes. Great.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I mean, because an average chiller, to be honest, is as expensive as most of the tanks. So
Yeah, I'm not sure what they go for over there, but here a decent one is they're normally upwards of $1,000, which is quite pricey.
I mean, you can start like on the low end, probably at about 300 and go. I mean, a really good one, like if you want to have one that you can mount outside so you're not heating the house up with that, I mean, you could easily spend $2,000 or $3,000 on it. So it's like buying an AC unit. So at that point, it's almost worth it to put in a split AC unit for wherever that tank is if it's in a room.
That's what I did.
How are they on power? Do they use a lot of power?
Chillers are very energy hungry, to be
Yeah,
honest.
oh my gosh, if you watch the Deborah Corker video of the Sea Dragons, she had to literally set up a room, like a barn with two huge chillers that are like, she said it just sucks electricity. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, the most of the chillers will use a boatload of energy, but I'll also tell you that if you're going to do that, if you're smart, you'll insulate the tank ahead of time. I had a 100-gallon tank with a quarter horse chiller that never stopped running, and I took another 100-gallon system and I added inch and a half styrofoam on the bottom, the back, and two sides, and I insulated the sump, and I put a 1/10 horsepower chiller on it, and it hardly ran at all.
Wow.
So insulating the tank will make a huge difference on how much the chiller runs and how quickly the temperature will change.
Yeah, I have insulation on all my tanks for that reason. Well, because we get so hot in the summer and so cold in the winter. And yeah, it's expensive to run the HVAC. So
That's why I typically use pink foam as like the base plate on most of my tanks.
Yeah.
Because even if it's a reef tank, that even just that amount of insulation, like a nice 3/4 inch thick piece of pink foam, especially with like a metal stand or something, you're gonna be well insulated off of the heat that's coming through the stand and keep it back in the tank as well.
It also has the added benefit of helping dampening any vibrations that might be there.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about vibrations. And actually, Chris, in the comment section earlier, you said though, when you get a chiller, do you have to get a dehumidifier? Or no, that was for fans, right? What it, you said something in the comment section.
Yeah. So so if you're gonna use a large fan to pull the heat off of your tank, you need a quality ATO with a large reservoir. And then I would recommend a dehumidifier because you'll actually increase the efficiency of the fans at the same time, and also not make your house a mold factory.
Right.
I can testify to that one because we ended up with mold remediation as a result of not running a dehumidifier and running a boatload of fans.
Yeah. See, I run two dehumidifiers, particularly during the winter months. And in the summer months, I run the turbo fans to keep the tanks cool because I have too many tanks to have a chiller on each.
It's
But
worthwhile buying one of those $10 electronic gadgets at Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever, that show you your humidity and your temperature in the room, and
yeah, I've
watch
got
your
one of those
humidity.
too.
Make sure that it doesn't go above 65.
Hmm.
I think my humidity's pretty low here.
Well,
As far as the
Mine
natural
wasn't,
humidity,
and Dan's advice actually helped me because I realized how badly it was getting in my house. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
yeah, down here we got high humidity to begin with. Never mind everything else, but the AC could not pull all the humidity out of the air. We had to run a dehumidifier to keep up with it.
yeah,
Now,
I
keep
don't
in
have a
mind, I had a
problem.
lot more tanks than most people.
Yeah.
I don't have trouble in the summer. When I get high humidity is in the winter when it's cold outside and the house is warm.
Yeah.
And I have two dehumidifiers that I run constantly during that time frame. It also adds warmth to the rooms, so it kind of does a double duty for me.
Gotcha.
Well,
I
honestly, also if you're gonna run it in an AC unit, like it's gonna be pulling humidity as well, but it's still better to run a dehumidifier because that humidity that is coming off of your tank, even though it's mainly plain water, there is microscopic amounts of salt in it as it pulls it off, and that over time, as your coil, which is what's pulling that water off, it'll start to erode your coils, which can be other problems as well.
Yeah.
I lost a mini split for that reason. In
Yeah,
fact, a lot of electronics in the room would, in fact, not just the electronics, we had a problem where the whole house, all of our, anything that was metal was starting to rust. And once we put the dehumidifier in place, that arrested that. But we had, even in rooms that were not anywhere close to the fish rooms, they were being affected by all the salt air in the house.
Yeah.
Oh, the back wall in my bedroom is screwed because I know that's not salt air, but I don't know. I just thought of it. Hey, and with a chiller, for those of you that do have them and run them, um, Deborah mentioned in the Sea Dragon video how much heat they put off. So they're chilling the tank, but they're putting off heat. Does that affect? Has that been affected any of you?
The, the chillers do put off heat. There's no question about that. And if you're smart, the ideal way to do it is to locate the chiller on the backside of a wall away from the tank. That's not always feasible, but if you're going to have it somewhere near the tank, I would probably do some type of small fan to blow the heat away from the tank.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Still, it's messing up your house. I don't. I'm glad I feel bad for anybody who has to use chillers, but I get it. Okay, so real quick, I know I'm going left field again, but I wanted to do this before Chris or anybody has to go, and we need to end it because it's been going 2 hours as per usual. Chris? Can
Yeah.
you
And I
see?
got
Go
to
ahead.
go top off tanks.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Thank you for coming.
I'm fine.
Oh,
I always have to top
I
off
kind of
tanks.
head off as well, but it was lovely to chat to you all.
Marina, hey,
It was
please
lovely to
come
talk
back
to you
next
as well.
week. Yes, thank you. When you can, I meant.
I will do my best. Thanks, guys.
Hey, I just
Hey,
got one question, Dan. Was this a submersible Apple phone that you were using to get these underwater pictures of the fry?
Yeah, I actually took this was a couple of months after Abby had passed away, and I took her iPhone and actually submerged it into the water and
Mm-hmm.
shot these videos with her iPhone underwater.
Nice.
Because I'm watching some of these little guys, and they're obviously snicking food too.
Oh yeah. Um, I did, I don't know how many I did. I probably somewhere around 30 or 40 videos before I had a problem with the phone.
Hmm.
That's awesome.
Maybe that's
Hey,
what I need to do with mine. Then I can get a new one.
I was just thinking that, Cheryl. Like, I need a new phone.
hey, real quick, Sam, if you're still watching or if Marina's still in the comment section, please feel free to also share the Melbourne group. I didn't even think of it, but we need to share that too for anyone in that area. So please share that group link if you're able in the comment section. Okay, real quick, Chris, are you watching on YouTube too or just in the Zoom? Is Chris gone? No.
No, he's still there.
No, I know, but
I'm in the Zoom. I'm in the Zoom, but I'll pull up the YouTube real quick.
okay, just because it would be easier for me to show you on the YouTube instead of trying to double dip in the Zoom. Because it made my comments. I can't see the. Also, if you're doing any comment questions right now, I apologize. When I tried to pull myself back up in the Zoom, I can't see the comments anymore. Sorry. I'll make sure they're answered next week. But yeah.
They're
So
just calling you all kinds of names, Kelly.
oh, okay. Nothing new. We're all good. Okay. Anyways, so I should show it in the Zoom too. I wonder if I can pull that off. I don't know. Let me see. Let me see if I can pull that off. We'll just have to see real quick. I'm
Yeah, I
replacing you,
think
Dan.
that.
So you got a nozzle.
Yeah, hang on, hang on. I want to see if I can show. No, it's not going to work, is it? Maybe. No, it'll just show my forehead. Let's not do that. Okay. All right. Well, actually, I'll do it real quick. So, guys, in the Zoom, what I'm trying to show is this,
That's a half
which
inch.
it is 1/2 inch for sure, because
I'm
this
pretty sure
is
that's an
3/4,
adapter.
and it ain't working. It's way, way bigger. Y'all
It's
see?
a 3/4 inch. It's lock line is what it is.
It can't be. This is 3/4. This is not. I know
No.
people
No.
watching. Hang on, hang on.
So
Let me
you,
turn off the
But
Zoom.
the thing is, with the lock line, if you're going to use it, it has a round bulb on the outflow, but that piece is not compatible with the lock line because it has a straight into it. It's not going to fit over those,
that's
regardless
your.
of what size you buy.
So that's your adapter. So you'd separate them.
These?
Yeah.
Take those two
No,
apart.
I can't.
No, you
It's
can't.
not going to come apart. That's not lock. The piece, one piece
No,
you got
right.
is not locked.
There's a piece. Wait, wait, wait. Time out, guys. Because Chris, I know what you're saying. There's a piece that's like this piece. Hang on, let me get. Okay. That
It should have a
screws
round bulb.
the piece up top that goes through the hole. Okay, and then the
Right.
pump connects on one side and the lock line connects on the other. And this
Right.
is way too big for the hole. So, did that make sense? So I'm just
I almost
asking
thought of
what
something, but I'm
size
not going to
lock line.
say it.
What? Okay.
I use
Oh, I
lock.
love it.
I use lock line a lot, and
Mhm.
I really love it because I can direct it where I want. I can move the flow around. I can make it helps keep the tanks clean because I can modify it, and you might find it a lot easier to maintain that tank you've got once you have the lock line set up in there because you have the ability. I even have it so I can turn off one side or the other because I have ball valves in there,
Yep.
so I can blast through one lock line and then open it back up if I want.
There's another advantage to the lock line in that it creates turbulence, which slows down the velocity of the water. Where on my tanks where I run straight PVC, I have to be careful because there's nothing to slow down the water, and it can create a much stronger stream.
Yeah. Well, that's why I also not only use the lock line, but I have the valves on each return in the fry system.
Well, I have the valves too, but if I'm running, a 3/4 inch piece of PVC that's a foot long and it's coming down,
Yeah.
there's nothing to slow it up. And with the
Uh,
lock line, I could take the lock line and create a curve in it, and where it
Yep.
comes in the water, and slow that velocity down quite a bit.
well, I
That's what I'm
found
hoping to
Adding
do. And
more
wait, real quick, guys. So you're telling me this is half, not quarter, right? Look at
Yes.
it compared to my hand.
That's half.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
half.
Just making sure
But
because
you
I was
said,
pissed off because the video told me 3/4. Go ahead. Sorry.
okay, don't feel bad. I needed to
but
order
just,
some half-inch and ordered 3/4 inch.
just so you know, those two pieces will come apart.
Yeah.
It's a pain, but you're going to need to separate them because that back piece is your adapter to whatever your tank output diameter is.
So wait, time out. So what you're saying is, and I know you're right if I get the wrench. Hey, this might come in handy to somebody someday. So we're gonna do it real quick. But so if I need to take, and I know you're right, it could if I had the wrench to take it apart or get somebody with muscles. And then my big
You have
wait,
the
Cheryl,
wrench.
wait, hang on. My question is, do I need to replace the piece that this connects to, or do I just remove this and use that ball with these? Did that make
It should
sense?
be, you just use the ball.
Okay.
You just
That's
use
what I
the
wanted.
ball. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so another reason why you're probably having like massive velocity issues is you have that big fan nozzle on there, which causes you to spread out a ton more water over a narrower area.
Mm.
So instead, you may want to go with something
Like that?
It sounds totally ridiculous, but have you seen like a VCA nozzle?
A what? Say it again.
The variable flow nozzles, they're like wave maker, but it's just a nozzle.
Oh. Huh. I'm looking it up.
You can also run the lock line without a nozzle on it.
Yeah, I would say
Right.
yeah, if you try it without the nozzle before anything else. Because
Right.
what you're doing is if you
I use the nozzles in the fry tanks. I do not use them in the adult tanks unless I'm wanting to do a cleaning. The thing is, with lock line, they have an expensive tool that makes it really easy to put them to pieces together. I found just drop them in some boiling water, give them about 30, 45 seconds, and they fit together really well.
Muckles.
And I don't have to spend money.
Just takes muckles.
Wait, Dan,
Yeah.
what? Smuckles?
Yeah, muckles.
What's a muckle?
muckle,
You have to
the
push
ones
them
that are
together.
on your arm,
Oh,
the muckles that are on your arm.
Sorry.
Is it
I'm like,
clams?
is this a tool?
Mussels and clams. No, they do have an actual tool that's designed to separate them and put the pieces together, but you really don't have to spend the extra money to do that.
I give them to my husband and ask him to do it.
Oh, well,
Honestly,
I gave it to Sean, and he was like, hell to the no, because if I break that, you're going to kill me. So, but I'll tell him he can do it now. What were you saying, Chris?
The biggest thing is that back adapter, because that adapter is specifically sized to your tank.
Right.
That's the part you don't want to break.
Well, and that's what, honestly, that the whole reason I'm asking is because Sean was like, listen, honey, it's probably Chinese made and not even a real diameter length or whatever. Okay, I probably shouldn't have said that. Anyways, he was just saying maybe it's not
It's
even the same
proprietary.
size of
Wait a
this
minute,
or
hold
whatever.
it up higher, Kelly. Hold it up higher. No,
What?
the black piece.
Yeah.
Hold it up. Lift your hand with
Like
the
to see
piece
it.
in it. All I can see is your eyebrows. I want to see the piece of.
Oh, sorry, you're in the
No.
Zoom. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I see what it is.
Hang on, let me
What is
show
it?
my.
Inch wide spray bar.
Can you see me
Yeah,
right now? Okay.
I think it might even be an 1.5 inch spray bar.
Yeah, because it's not. Doesn't look like the usual lock one that I have.
Well, no, because it has a back flip on
Yeah.
the back of it specifically for that tank. So like
Oh.
a
Right.
lot of these all-in-ones, they try and bring it back to lock line because that's a common thing. The other option that might work for you is if you look for the IM, what's their name? The people that make IM products.
Innovative Marine?
Innovative Marine, they make a wave maker
Yeah.
that
I saw it.
it's driven by the water, so it actually slows the water down because there's like a fan blade inside of there that's
Oh, cool.
using it to power a geared motor, and it moves the like a diameter like of pipe around in a circular motion, and that kind of stirs up the water column. I ran one of those in my BioCube for probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. I mean, the only thing is you have to take it apart and clean it every like.
Hey,
You
I
know.
cleaned
Oh
five.
boy, wait, hold up. You just said clean, and that means work. I'm out. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah.
I'll look it up. One quick question, Cheryl. I know you're trying to say something,
No,
and we
I
do
said
have to. Go ahead, Cheryl.
he was talking cleaning. I cleaned 5 skimmers rated for 180 gallons today. I'm like,
Jeez.
That's
You're-
called a bucket of citric acid at my old shop.
I used to clean 30 of them every day.
hey Dan, I could not do 30.
Right.
Um,
That's why people aren't
we
breeders.
use we use the same skimmers, so I know what it's like. And those
Yep.
air intakes can be a real pain, but if you soak them in vinegar, they come back just like new.
That's why I use citric acid. I had
Hey, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Guys,
I had
I'm
a
sorry, but I
tiny-
got to call it. I'm going to have to wish you all a great night.
Hey, Dan, thank you for coming. I'm going to contact you on the side. Just make sure you're
Okay.
good, but thank you so much for coming.
Have a great night, everyone.
You too.
Hey, good night, Dan.
And I'm
Kelly,
saying, guys, we got
I
5
got
minutes.
to top off.
Go ahead,
I got
Cheryl.
to
Go
top
ahead.
off. Oh.
Thank you guys so much for coming. Go top off. I have one more question for Chris, and then we'll pick this back up next week for sure. And Kya, I do want to say I'm sorry I stopped seeing the comments, but I'm gonna go make sure that you are. Look, poor Ray's the big face
Talking
now.
with them now on Messenger.
Huh? Oh, good, good. I'm so glad. Okay.
I haven't even followed what you guys are talking about. I heard something about Lockline, but my mind doesn't work on 2 planes anymore.
Totally
Old age.
with you. Keep helping him.
Okay.
All right, so last question, Chris, about the lock line. Sorry, I know it's boring, but it might help somebody someday, and it's helping me. So, hey. So the one thing I was fearful about as I was replacing the size, because I got the wrong size at 3/4 inch, is that the piece that goes from this nozzle piece and the adapter that you called it, the piece that goes through the hole in the back chambers, does totally not look like this. There's no, like, this has um threads. Threads is, yes.
Yeah, I know.
And the other one that's on the tank does not. So, but my question is, that doesn't matter to me because the only piece I'm going to end up using is this, which I'll stick on this, right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And to be honest, before we scream, it's half inch. I mean, that's what my guess is that it's half inch.
Mhm.
Go to the microwave and heat up like the largest microwave bowl you have. Not to like boiling, because that stuff is not the same plastic like Blockline is.
Okay.
But try heating it up and pulling it apart, like she suggested earlier.
Okay.
But not to like boiling, because that plastic I doubt is as resilient as the actual Lockline plastic. So
Right. Go ahead.
Lockline is a product that was not invented for fish tank. It is invented for commercial application. They pump hot liquids through it. They pump all kinds of stuff. So it has to be very robust, right?
Mhm.
It's the stuff that you find on a fish tank that's on it already is something that's put through an injection mold machine and is not the same level of quality as that product that you have, the blue product.
Okay, I'm listening. Sorry, I'm sorry.
So just like heat up some water in a bowl in the microwave and try seeing if that makes it easier, because it might make that product a little more flexible in pulling
And
it off.
sure, and in pulling it off. And just final question. So if I was to use a measuring tape, you said the internal diameter is what I need to measure. But is it, when you say measure the internal diameter, are you talking about for this part? Or because they're different sizes, you can see that. Like, am I looking at the adapter and measuring it? Or the hose
You're
and measuring it?
measuring the inside diameter of the adapter,
Okay,
not
that's what I
the,
needed. Okay. So it's not the size of the hole in the compartment, because that's going to be smaller for the adapter to fit on it.
no, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Or
like,
no?
and that's one of the things is like, no, you were right. You're
Okay.
right. The hole is the inside on the adapter, not the other side, because that's the outside diameter of the lock line.
Okay. This stuff's confusing, y'all. I mean, it is. It's confusing. But
So another option, so you can see if like VCA has a 3D printed adapter for your tank. Because like on my tank, I went from using that Innovative Marine size one to a fully 3D printed from VCA adapter to my BioCube, and then a VCA nozzle, which is going to give you random flow too, which will help stir up the detritus and stuff, will help export it better. But it is going to kind of give you like peaks and valleys of flow. I don't know how the Seahorses do with that, to be honest.
no, they like that. They like when it's every wave maker I've had randomly set. They love that when it's not continuous, the same
When
thing.
it's just random flow. So then, I mean, and you have two nozzles, right, on the tank, the 40? Yep. So you may just want to look out, like look at either, whoever is your preferred provider for online supplies. See if they have like, first off, figure out if it's 3/4 or not.
Right.
by plugging it in or out to that product you have. If it's too big, then obviously it's 1/2 inch. And then go find, you may just want to look at getting VCA nozzles. The nice part about them is, to clean them, you just dump them in some vinegar or citric acid. Like there's no moving parts on it, so you don't have to take them apart or do anything crazy. You just take them off the lock line, and then you put them in some cleaning fluid.
I'm
and
excited. I'm excited.
I always buy some.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I said I always just buy a couple extra. That way, like, I just pop a fresh one on and throw that dirty one in the bucket, and when I remember to clean it out, I go get it, I go clean it under the fresh water, and then it's ready for the next time.
Right. Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your help. And I just want to say to anybody who has watched all the way to this point, if you are an all-in-one tank person like my friend Dylan or anyone else, please join us next week, because we're going to talk flow. We're going to try to fix, I'm going to have both 1/2 and 1/4 inch lock line, and I'm probably going to literally take you over to the tank, and we're going to hook this up and figure it out to get the flow right. And I want to hear how flow in your tank works, and we'll talk a little bit more about skimmers for all-in-ones and all that good stuff, and how the Seahorses are doing. So join us next week. Holly, I wanted to ask if there's anything else you wanted to share, because I got off on a tangent.
No, I'm excited kind of to talk about flow next week. And yeah, because I use lock line. I don't have any wave makers. I don't have any experience with those. So I'd kind of like to talk about, the different ways to create flow and what's best for the different situations. What are the best products? All that. I'm really interested in that.
Well, I hate to make you wait, but next week, y'all. And Chris, thank you so much for jumping in. Ray, thank you so much for helping with Kya.
Yep.
And you guys, I am going to have to cut it though, because it's past my bedtime. All right. So you guys say night, I'll say cheers, and we'll be back next week to talk flow and all that good stuff.
Okay, good night.
Thank
Right,
you.
cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Happy Wine Wednesday. See you next